Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And we are back with another podcast. This is our second installment of yesterday's podcast concerning the truth about Bank of America and taking a deeper dive and look under the hood and see how deep the rabbit hole goes. And I knew that this would have to be done in parts because there's just so much information to deal with here. And so I wanted to take my time and give it to you straight, give it to you right, give it to you raw, uncut, all that good stuff. For those that don't know, I'm the algo capitalist, aka the Vulcan, and this podcast has been brought to you by postwavetrading.com, home of the world famous postwave price trigger reports that are updated daily during regular trading hours for Wall Street. We trade everything from stocks to forex to cryptocurrencies, financial futures, you name it, we got it. And these priceless reports to go out ahead of the market's openings and well ahead of the market's move. And the reports will give you heads up alerts when a major move is about to happen, all that good stuff. So, those that don't know, trend following is the number one technique for consistent, profitable trading and investing over time that has ever been created. Don't let anyone tell you, oh, you can't time the market, blah, blah, blah. That's nonsense because you pay people to do that for you every day. If you have a 401k at your job and you're contributing to it, you are paying someone, a fiduciary, to do just that. How else are they going to get those returns for you? Market timing. All right. Most of them do their best. They try to pick stocks that they think will outperform. So they're timing the market. And most of them, they like to use the dollar cost averaging technique. And that's all, fun and good. But because these are not your great grandpappy's markets, that buy and hold is not going to do you much good anymore because people's time horizons have shortened. It doesn't matter if you're 18 years old and you're just starting your way out into the world and you're starting to save and invest money. Traditionally, you would think, well, you got at least a 50 or 60-year time horizon for yourself. No, you don't, because things are moving so fast and we have transitioned from the industrial age to the information age. And what came out in technology last week is now obsolete this week. Things are constantly changing and evolving. Layoffs are happening right and left, layoffs by the tens of thousands. The company you work for this month, you may not be working for next month. So the economy has become more fluid. Therefore, individuals have had to become more nomadic and fluid and flexible as well. Hey, what's up, brother? You made it. I'm glad you made it. My brother has made it. Good to see you. So, because of the fluidity of things, fluidity of culture, of ideas, of technology, all types of dynamics have come into play. And now these dynamics have changed everyone's time horizon. Your time horizon has been cut from decades to years to months to weeks to days. And that's really what it is. It's a day to day existence. You don't know what tomorrow will bring, and you have no consistency or security. Job security is a myth, it does not exist. You can be let go, terminated from work for any reason. And because most states are right to work, no fault type states, your employer can terminate you if you're new that 90-day trial period. They can let you go during that 90-day trial period for no reason. They don't have to give you a reason. They can just say it didn't work out. Goodbye. And for those of you who have been working at a job longer than 90 days, you can still be let go. You can still be laid off. They can say we're downsizing, or um, we're getting rid of your department. That department doesn't exist anymore, so we no longer have need of you. Thank you. Goodbye. You can be pink slipped. So right to work. You can be let go at any time. The only rules that kind of guide and prohibit certain firings is for race, color, creed, religion, orientation, blah, blah, blah. As long as they are not infringing on that, then they can let you go for any reason. So your job security has no longer been valid. It's been taken away from you. You don't have job security. Security in and of itself is also a myth. It's fake news. There's no such thing as security. You can try to mitigate your risks. You can try to manage your risks, but you will never ever be able to eliminate risk altogether. The fact that we are alive is a risk. You don't know from minute to minute, second to second, if you will be here. You cannot say for certainty that you will be here 5 minutes from now. We would like and hope and think that we will be, but there's no guarantee or promise of that. All right. So, because of this, we have to be mindful as we move forward and understand that there have been sharp dynamic changes and shifts within the cultures where we live, and within the world we live, this country you live. And we have to adjust and adapt to these seemingly endless changes, never ending changes. Now, some of you are new to all of this. You're just coming into the light. You've just been enlightened. You realize that your government, if you're in the United States, I'm specifically speaking to those in the West, in the United States of America, you have woken up and realized that the world that you have been living in is a lie. You've been lied to. You've been manipulated. You've been hoodwinked. All right. And now you've been financially shafted. And you're trying to figure out, how did this happen? Where did all this come from all of a sudden? How did we get here? Well, that answer to that question is multifaceted and quite complex. And it takes different turns and avenues and routes. The rabbit hole of that is vastly deep and quite wide. It's not just one thing that transpired that got us here. Rather, it is a multiplicity of events that have taken place to have gotten us here. Now, I understand that this is a lot to take in. Some of you have just come into the knowledge of Sandy Hook and 9/11 and the shape of the earth and space travel and, history and dinosaurs and giants and things of that nature, and the supernatural and cryptids and all these things. And you are blown away, and rightfully so. I understand. Just take it a little bit at a time. It's going to take years for you to wrap your head around all of the truthful information that you have been kept from. And believe it or not, that your government has done a very fine job of dumbing down its citizenry so that the average person doesn't know these things. And they don't care to know, because that's how effective the dumbing down process has been. And it wasn't done overnight. The dumbing down process was done over decades through the public educational system as well as the private educational system. You would think that institutions of higher learning, the university level, would be vastly different than what you were taught and heard in your public school. But the truth is, all they do is reinforce the information that you were fed in public school. That's all that universities do. The universities finally realized that they are not a truth organization, they are a profit center. The university no longer exists to educate young minds and to shape leaders of the future. No, no, no. That's what they want you to believe, but that is not why they are in business. Universities are in business to make money. And so they had their day in the sun and they started creating new degrees that you could go after, degrees in painting Skittles and M&Ms. Now, you would think that most people would have sense enough to not take these degrees in worthlessness and throw money down the toilet, but that's exactly what people did because they were basically giving away degrees. So for people who would have never been college bound otherwise, realize I could go and get a degree. It doesn't matter what I get a degree in. At least I can show that I have a degree and then I can move up in my job, especially those that work for the state or work for the federal government. A degree is a golden ticket to elevation. It can take you from a GS1 to a GS10 seemingly overnight. So people would go and there was a rush, a mad rush to get a degree. Didn't matter what you got in it. Got a degree in painting Skittles. Okay, fine. I have a degree in watching birds sing. What do you have your degree in? My degree is in chocolate chip cookies. I have a doctorate in chocolate chip cookies. I can tell you the history of chocolate chip cookies. I can tell you all the different variations of chocolates that go into the chocolate chip cookie. As a matter of fact, I can snap my fingers and produce a chocolate chip cookie just like that. All right. Now you may laugh, but it's true. If you look at some of the degrees that emerged during the 1990s, and even some still exist to this day, they're degrees in worthlessness. It's not going to land you a job. Unless you have a degree in robotics or some type of computer engineering, you're done. You're not going to make it. You're not going to find a job. Now I know what you're thinking. Well, the tried and true traditional, doctor or lawyer. If I go and become a doctor, or if I go and become a lawyer, I'm going to be good to go. Now you would think that, wouldn't you? But again, this is no longer the Industrial Revolution. This is now the information age. And guess what? Even the medical establishment has changed. And soon you won't need doctors and nurses because everything will be done by robots, even surgery. Artificial intelligence will be able to do white collar as well as blue collar jobs. So you won't need human intervention. You won't need to see a doctor. You can just talk to an AI. An AI will diagnose you, and then it can even prescribe you a medication and even have it delivered to your house. You don't have to leave the house. That's right. A virtual doctor's appointment. How many people have had virtual office visits with their physician in the last 3 years? Something never before even heard of. Virtual virtual healthcare? Yeah, that's right. And soon there'll be virtual bail bondsmen, virtual everything. Virtual lawyer. I need a lawyer. Okay. Just turn on your cell phone and go to the attorney AI app, download the app, and you'll get an artificial intelligence attorney that specializes in your field that you're looking for. Because that they'll do that. They'll make it a boutique instead of just having one algo that does everything. They'll specialize. Do you need a family lawyer? Okay, here's the family AI. Do you need a defense lawyer? Okay, well, here's a defense artificial intelligence app. You need to download this app. Oh, yeah. And instead of going to a court, you won't even need to go to court. That'll be virtual too. You have to download the court app. And then a virtual judge, an artificial intelligence judge, will hear your case as your AI argues on your behalf. And instead of a jury that may take days or weeks or months to deliberate a case, no, you have artificial intelligence. You got AI juries, and they'll break it down. Do you want an African American AI? Do you want, a Latina AI? Do you want a female AI, a male AI? What age category do you want? And so you can actually participate in your jury pool. That's right. And you don't have to do anything, because then the lawyer AI will communicate with the defense AI will talk to the prosecuting AI, and then they will correspond with the AI judge. And now your case can be tried. Talking about speedy trial, right to a speedy trial. You ain't seen speed. All this stuff can take place in a hundredth of a second. Okay, you've been found guilty. Would you like to appeal this process now? You can appeal. Uh, please deposit $500, and you can appeal your case, and it'll be heard. And then within seconds, you'll get an answer on that. Once you've made your payment and all that stuff, everything will happen in a flash. Now you may say, okay, well, what if you're found guilty and it's a felony and you never had to leave your house? Oh, don't worry about it. The police dogs, robot dogs, remember those things? They're out front, and yes, they are armed with laser cannons and rocket launchers and everything you can think of, even mace. And they're there to arrest you and to take you into custody. Please open the door, come out with us, and please come quietly. Oh, and don't worry. Oh, I don't have my keys. I got to lock my door. Oh, don't worry. Remember, you live in a smart house, and the police dog has the authority, according to new laws, rules, and regulations. He can lock up your smart house for you. Don't worry about it. Yeah, that's right. This is the world we're going to. This is the world you're about to live in. And I know it's hard. It is hard for people to wrap their heads around what's happening. Now, for those of you that are hearing me, but you're not quite there yet, you haven't awoken and arrived, because you're still programmed by anything that remotely resembles a conspiracy or a conspiracy theory. First of all, the word conspiracy added to the word theory takes away from what the definition of a conspiracy is. A conspiracy is two or more people who conspire to achieve a thing. And when you add the word theory to it, it takes away from the actual word conspiracy. Because now you're saying, oh, well, it wasn't a conspiracy, it's a theory. Well, no, it's either something was done or it wasn't. Either that man that you said here robbed that woman, or he didn't. You can't say, well, no, saying that my client here robbed that old woman is a conspiracy theory. Well, it's not a theory, sir. We have him on camera robbing the old woman. No, it's still a conspiracy theory. I don't we don't listen to conspiracy theories. So my client is not even going to show up to court. It's a conspiracy theory. We don't do conspiracy theories here. When you have some facts, then you can come talk to us. No. You see what happens when you take your programming into the real world? It breaks down. It doesn't work because it's foolishness. That terminology was put together to numb you, to numb your senses, and you heard it so much, so often. They make sure you heard it on television shows, commercials, movies, video games, radio, music, sports. And not only did they make sure you heard that term over and over again, but they also added the negative connotations to it. So in the sitcom, you hear the word come up from the person who's talking and trying to educate another person, and then everyone turns on the person, starts laughing at them and ostracizing them. So now subconsciously, you don't want to be violated like that. You see that person being laughed at, So automatically you shut down now when you hear a conspiracy theory or anything that goes against the ordained narrative. All right. So you got to break that programming. Because again, a conspiracy is two or more people who have conspired to achieve a thing. And that's all it is. So when we say conspiracy, please understand that people have conspired with one another for millennia. Ever since humans have been on earth, people have conspired together to achieve a purpose, a goal. You and your spouse conspire with each other every day. You gather together and agree on a particular purpose or goal that you want to achieve. It doesn't matter if it's as small a thing as who's going to do the laundry today. You conspired, you met with, talked about, discussed, and came up with an agreement, a strategy on what you were going to accomplish. That's all it means to conspire. Now, the negative connotation of conspire is meaning hidden, done in the dark, all right, done behind closed doors. You're attempting to deceive, to elude. And the fact of the matter is, this is what we have to deal with in order to break your program, and you have to come to understand that. So, regardless of what the motivations are, for some people it's greed, another person it may be revenge or power or whatever. People do it every day. Yesterday we discussed how Bank of America conspired to defraud and deceive their clients. Excuse me. And I gave you some documented information on that that is part of the public domain. You don't even need the Freedom of Information Act to address it. Just pull up any archived newspaper article. It's right there. It's in the press. It's printed. So we do know that things have happened. But I think a lot of people, the reason why they struggle with coming to terms with a lot of this is because it means you have to do something. Once you know something, now you have to do something about it. If you don't know and you can claim ignorance, then you don't have to do anything. And no one's going to hold you to do anything. No one's going to expect you to do anything. So, in that regard, some people view ignorance as bliss. If I don't know about it, then it can't bother me. It can't affect me. But that is not true. You can just because you ignore something doesn't make it go away. It just means you've chosen not to engage for whatever reason. So I say all that to you today because you need to understand that the world we live in is rife with conspiracies. And there's a difference between a conspiracy theory and a conspiracy fact. Conspiracy theories means there's no witness, no evidence, no nothing, just suspicions. But a conspiracy fact is based on evidence, tangible evidence, evidence admissible in a court of law, whether it be eyewitness testimony or whatever, physical evidence, DNA, whatever. And that's what we're going to be dealing with here when we talk about what's happening with the US banking system and Bank of America specifically. And now I want to help to deprogram and open your eyes and show you the reality of things that we know for a fact have happened and are duly documented and noted. So we're going to look at a couple of real examples to get the juices flowing. All right. And I'm not gonna hold you long. I just want to break this down. Do you know there are at least a handful of real, actual, documented conspiracies on record that we know about that we can prove with evidence admissible in a court of law? Again, I understand There are millions, if not billions, of people out there, all right, who have been forced to consume a lot of false conspiracy theories. But it's the real conspiracies that are wrecking our world. All right. You need to understand that. The world is awash in a deluge of dangerous conspiracy theories. Most notoriously, the bizarre QAnon fantasy postulates that a global child sex trafficking ring is being run by liberal, Satan worshiping pedophiles whose plot will be uncovered by President Donald Trump on a day of reckoning involving mass arrests. This surreal mass delusion is not only one infecting millions of people around the world, but it went viral on social media. All right. Now, because there's not enough evidence to satisfy most people, that's how they take that. But it's not true. Let's go further. Number one, the first one we're going to look at. What about the conspiracy to turn the world into a giant marketplace for the benefit of the wealthy elite? Did you know that that was a conspiracy? A conspiracy fact? Back in 1947, as the world was rebuilding from the destruction of the Second World War, a few dozen free market ideologues met in a luxury Swiss resort to form the Mount Pérelin Society, an organization devoted to spreading the ideology of neoliberalism throughout the world. Their ideas that the free market should dominate virtually all aspects of society, that regulations should be dismantled, and that individual liberty should eclipse all other considerations of fairness, equity, or community welfare, were considered fanatical at the time. Over 3 decades, though, financed by wealthy donors, they assiduously expanded their plot for global domination, establishing networks of academics, businessmen, economists, journalists, and politicians in global centers of power. When the stagflation crisis of the 1970s threw classic Keynesianism economics into dispute, their moment of opportunity arrived. By 1985, with free market disciples Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher entrenched in power, they initiated a campaign to systematically transform virtually all aspects of life into an unrestrained marketplace where everything could be bought and sold to the highest bidder, subject to no moral scruple. They crippled trade unions, tore up social safety nets, reduced tax rates for the wealthy, eliminated regulations, and instituted a massive transfer of wealth from society at large to the uber elite. Every time a new crisis occurred, of their own making, such as the Great Recession of 2008. They took advantage of the mayhem they caused to double down on their power and extend their reach even further, bringing the ideology of the marketplace into domains such as education, law enforcement, wild wilderness preserves, etc. They had previously been considered sacrosanct. With the advent of the COVID-19 pandemic, this conspiracy has found yet another opportunity to squeeze wealth from the bulk of society into the hands of the few. In the United States, since the pandemic began, while 200,000 Americans have died from the coronavirus and more than 50 million have lost their jobs, the collective wealth of this country's billionaires has soared a whopping astronomical 29% to $3.8 trillion. Jeff Bezos alone could give every American employee $105,000 and still be as wealthy as he was before the coronavirus hit. Now, you chew on that for a minute. That was a conspiracy fact. You had the conspiracy, and then you had the facts to go with it. You can look this up, you can research that, you can fact check that all you want. It happened, and it's currently happening as we speak. Well, Let's go on to the second conspiracy. Conspiracy by transnational corporations to turn billions of people into addicts. In the 1920s, two ruthless men laid out a sinister scheme to gain control of the minds of Americans. Their plan: to identify people's deeply buried needs and use subtle messaging to manipulate them into doing whatever they wanted without realizing it, even at the cost of their health and well being. One of them, Edward Bernays, was Sigmund Freud's nephew and used his uncle's insights into the subconscious to develop his new methods. Their goal was to turn normal working Americans into manic consumers, training them to desire an ever increasing amount of goods and thereby converting their life's energy into profit for American corporations. We must shift Americans from a needs to a desires culture, declared Bernays' partner Paul Mazur. People must be trained to desire, to want new things, even before the old have been entirely consumed. We must shape a new mentality. Man's desires must overshadow his needs. In 1928, Bernays proudly described how his techniques for mental manipulation had already permitted a small elite to control the minds of the American population. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government that is the true ruling power of the country. We are governed, our minds molded, our taste formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. In almost every act of our daily lives, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons who pull the wires which control the public mind. Since then, this conspiracy has succeeded beyond its instigators' wildest dreams. Corporations have perfected the technique of mind control by tweaking core human instincts that originally evolved to support our ancestors flourishing in hunter gathering bands, such as the desire for status or fear of exclusion for the nefarious purposes. Now, corporate predators have learned that the most valuable population to ensure are children. In the sinister words of Chief Executive Wayne Chicky, when it comes to targeting kid consumers, we at General Mills believe in getting them early and having them for life. That's a quote directly from him. Children in the global south are turned into junk food addicts with the same callous contempt that factory farms turn their animals into chicken nuggets. Half of the children in South Asia are now either undernourished or overweight, conditioned by pervasive advertising to spend what little money they have on the empty calories of junk food. A generation of mind controllers are now using sophisticated data mining technologies to inject their power even deeper into our minds. At the ominously named Stanford Persuasive Technology Lab, a modern day Bernays named BJ Fogg has taught budding entrepreneurs how to use hot triggers such as thumbs up signs and like statistics to activate short hits of dopamine in your brain that literally gets you addicted to the screen. With social media now infiltrating every aspect of many teenagers' lives, the power of predatory corporate advertising to control their minds for profit has become even more formidable. Now, back in 2017, a leaked document revealed Facebook boasting to advertisers how they can identify in real time when teenagers feel insecure and worthless and would be most susceptible to a confidence boost. Again, a conspiracy to manipulate the minds of the young people. I've just blazed you up with two documented conspiracy facts, not theories, facts. What I just said to you are facts, documented facts, truths. Is your mind starting to open now to the fact that you've been lied to and manipulated, and that the banking crisis is 100 times worse than you could ever imagine? Well, we're not there yet. Let's take a look at another conspiracy fact. How about the conspiracy to plunder the global south for the benefit of the global north? Ah, ever since Portuguese and Spanish explorers set sail in the 13th century on a quest for wealth and power, a small population of white Europeans have conspired to use their technological advantage to despoil, plunder, and exploit the rest of the world's wealth for their own benefit. With the Treaty of Saragossa in 1529, Spain and Portugal carved up the 9 European continents between them for conquest and booty. After the Industrial Revolution, the countries of Northern Europe took over the plot for global supremacy, devastating the lives of tens of millions of Africans mercilessly chained and shipped as slaves to the colonies. After the abolition of the slave trade, the brutal exploitation continued through an international system of indentured labor. Having destroyed their livelihood in their native countries, European potentates transported more than 60 million desperate workers from India, China, and the Pacific Islands to territories where they were needed, and what was frequently referred to as the new form of slavery. This vast global scheme of human trafficking was promoted by colonial magnates such as Cecil Rhodes, who declared, "We must find new lands from which we can easily obtain raw materials and at the same time exploit the cheap slave labor that is available from the natives of the colonies." The colonies would also provide a dumping ground for the surplus goods produced in our factories. In more recent times, the plot continues in different guises. During the decades after the Second World War, global South leaders who demanded a fair role in the economic system were systematically deposed in coups arranged by US, British, and French militaries. In a vast loan sharking scheme, countries impoverished by colonialism then racked up unsustainable debts forced on them by global North banks. When they couldn't pay them back without bankrupting their nations, they were coerced into so called structural adjustment programs, which opened their labor markets and natural resources to further plunder by the North's transnational corporations. The World Bank, IMF, and the World Trade Organization are all controlled by a few wealthy nations that set the terms for international trade, with the result that through the combination of illicit financial flows, debt interest payments, and profit reparation, wealth continues to flow from the south to the north at the rate of about $1, 2, 3 trillion a year. Let that marinate just for a little bit. Uh, is your ears starting to open up a little bit more now? Is the brain starting to process this information? So now you see that it's not far fetched that the world you live in today is the world that was planned back then. Now, do you see? It's not a conspiracy theory, it's a conspiracy fact. Our next one is a conspiracy to hide the effects of climate breakdown for corporate profit. For over 50 years, fossil fuel executives have known about the reality of human induced climate change, yet they spent most of that time deliberately concealing their knowledge and obfuscating public discussions on the topic so they could rake in trillions of dollars in profit. In 1968, the Stanford Research Institute alerted the American Petroleum Institute, the National Trade Association that represents America's oil and natural gas industry, to the fact that CO2 emissions were accumulating in the atmosphere and could reach 400 parts per million by 2000. The report warned them that rising CO2 levels will result in melting ice caps, rising seas, and serious environmental damage worldwide. Exxon scientists studied the issue further, reporting to management in 1977 that there was overwhelming consensus that fossil fuels were responsible for CO2 increases. In an internal Exxon memo in 1981, scientists raised the alarm that the company's 50-year plan will later produce effects which will indeed be catastrophic, at least for a substantial fraction of the Earth's population. Exxon and the other fossil fuel companies knew their actions would lead to climate breakdown, and instead of trying to solve the problem, they lied to the public to hide their misdeeds. Following the example of the tobacco industry, which had already condemned millions to early deaths through cynical deception, they embarked on a concerted strategy to dupe the public by paying fake experts to publish papers, cherry picking selective data to support false conclusions, and sow their own wild conspiracy theories to deflect attention from their crimes. Now, as a result of this, the world is now facing a dire climate emergency. If the fossil fuel companies had confronted the issue honestly from the outset, there could have been a managed transition to renewable energy over decades, causing little disruption of saving millions of lives to reduce pollution. Now, instead, it will now take an immediate global mobilization to avoid a 2 degrees Celsius rise in temperature over a pre industrial level. The world is currently on track for more than 3 Celsius rises this century alone, with the high likelihood of stumbling into a tipping point cascade that quickly leads to a 3 or 4 degree world, one that becomes rapidly unrecognizable, with the Amazon rainforest turning into searing desert, coastal cities inundated by flooding, super hurricanes tearing the windows out of skyscrapers, persistent massive droughts and famine across the world, and hundreds of millions of desperate climate refugees. Meanwhile, by putting billions of human lives in jeopardy, the four biggest fossil fuel companies, ExxonMobil, Royal Dutch Shell, Chevron, and BP, have made $2 trillion in profits since they began their campaign of lies in 1990. Now, to be fair and to be balanced, the real truth here is not so much as, causing man-made crisis, making things irreversible with the climate. That has actually been disproven. Man-made global warming does not exist. Man-made climate change does not exist in the sense that it's the fault of fossil fuels. Here's where the fossil fuel companies are at fault. Let me explain this one. Okay, put on your thinking caps. First and foremost, what they are guilty of is not polluting the earth like the scientism worshipers will have you to believe. What the oil companies are at fault is in lying and deceiving the public, especially with these record-breaking oil spills and things like that they've had, where they claim there was no damage to the environment and that people were safe. That is where they erred the most. That is the real lie. That's not true. They're also guilty of stamping out renewable energy technologies. It's been documented twice to when I did my research. There were two people that created a car that ran on water. and they stamped that out. They made sure that that information would not come out. They bought the second one. They bought the rights and bought the company and all that stuff and bought the technology, and they own the patents now. And they're going to make sure that that car never sees the light of day. All right, because then that would just take away all their profits, and they can't have that. So they are guilty of that. But as far as the climate goes, you need to understand something. You have been deceived as far as climate change goes. They're using the same techniques that Edward Bernays did in advertising. It's the same thing. If you disagree with their fake science, then you're called a climate denier. Okay. And as far as climate change is concerned, the very ones that are sounding the loudest and making the most noise, they're the ones that are contributing the most to the damaging of the climate. So the same government agencies from around the world and activists who work with these government agencies and are on the payroll of some of these agencies, they're the ones that are damaging the climate on purpose. That's right. You heard me say it, on purpose. It's not the oil companies that's doing the most damage to the climate. It's the governments of the world who got together and agreed that they should chemtrail the world, dumping billions of gallons of aluminum and other dangerous chemicals into the environment. And they denied it for decades. It's just recently that they finally came out and said, fine, you caught us. Yeah, we've been doing it since the 1950s, but we're doing it because of climate change. See how they do? See how they flip the script on you? See the Vulcan mind meld? See the Jedi mind trick? First they say, no, we're not doing it. That's a conspiracy theory. And then when the document evidence comes out, they say, okay, fine, we've been doing it, but we've been doing it because, we're trying to stop global warming and climate change, which is a lie. They're spraying, their aerosol campaign is what is damaging the planet. And they've been doing it so that they can say, see, we do have climate change. See, look, just take a look. Of course, because you made it that way. By spraying, you can say, see, look how terrible the weather is now. Yeah, you made it that way. And they say, no, we didn't. That's because of man-made global warming and because of the CO2 emissions. And that's why we got to do this and we got to do that. No, problem, action, solution. They create the mess and then they present you with their solution when they're the ones that created the mess in the first place. Please understand these things, folks. Our final one that you need to wrap your head around, and this is a fact, not a theory, and that's the conspiracy to grow the global economy indefinitely while killing most of life on Earth and risking the collapse of civilization. That's right, you heard me. I did not stutter. This is a conspiracy fact, not a theory. Let's get into it. In a barely noticed footnote to the Daily News, the World Wildlife Fund recently released a shocking report revealing a devastating 68% worldwide decline in animal populations in the past 50 years. Even this dismal news hides more gut-wrenching statistics, such as the 84% decline in amphibians, reptiles, and fishes, or the 94% decline in animal populations in South America. Add to that, there is a global decline in birth rates. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You don't have to be afraid of the world being overpopulated because birth rates are down to historical levels across the world. Notably, Japan, America, and China. Did you know that? Did you know that the more affluent a person is, the less children they have? That's a scientific fact. Let's continue. This is just the latest bulletin making the demise of nature as it succumbs to the relentless growth of human economic activity across the world. Three-quarters of all land have been appropriated for human purposes, either turned into farmland covered by concrete or flooded by reservoirs. Three-quarters of rivers and lakes are used for crop or livestock cultivation, with many of the world's greatest rivers, such as the Ganges, the Yangtze, and the Nile, no longer reaching the sea. Half of the world's forests and wetlands have disappeared. The Amazon rainforest alone is vanishing at the rate of an acre every second. Meanwhile, the world's gross domestic product is forecast to nearly triple by the middle of this century, by which time it's estimated that 5 billion people will be facing water shortages. 95% of the Earth's arable land will be degraded, and there will be more plastic fish in the ocean. That's right, there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean. It's been estimated by leading experts that by the end of this century, half of the world's estimated 8 million species will be extinct or at the brink of extinction unless humanity changes its ways. These depredators combined with climate breakdown are believed by an increasing number of analysts to spell the likely collapse of modern civilization. Are you hearing me? Because of all the chemtrailing, because of all the toxic chemicals that they put in the water and put in the food and put in the air, which is wreaking havoc on the environment. And as far as the water shortages go, did you know that large corporations such as Nestle have dominated certain parts of the world where they take the people's water sources and control it? And because of the corrupt governments in those areas, they will shoot and kill anyone who gets in the way or tries to stop Nestle and other large corporations from taking the water sources from the people. That's right. They've even gone as far as damming rivers. Oh, yeah. So it's not a water crisis that is organic, like all of a sudden it's not raining as much or the sea levels are falling. No, 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 no. It's large, greedy corporations damming rivers and taking people's water sources from them. And they like to do it in poorer countries where they can control things and just hit the governments over the head with a large briefcase stuffed full of money. So the whole water crisis, yeah, it's a water crisis of man's making. It's not an organic thing. It's being done because of greed and all types of evil at the government level. Not only that, but all the quadrillions of dollars being thrown away. Money could be spent to make sure that every country has running water, clean, potable water. How you going to live next to an ocean and have no water? You can convert seawater into potable water and drinking water. The technology exists for that. There's no reason why a country should have no water. The sea is endless with water. There's no reason why you should not be able to have water. But it's because they don't want everybody to have water. Now are you getting it? Think of all the billions of dollars that have been raised in UNICEF and all these organizations. Look at all the people who have gone into the continent of Africa saying we want to build wells and we want to do this and do that. If they took that same money and made it so that the continent had potable drinking water and that no country within the continent of Africa did not have it, we have enough money in the world to do that. Think about it. If the Federal Reserve can print endless money for stimulus, why can't some of that money be sent over to countries that need water, where you can build the facilities so that they can have drinking water and potable water? There's no reason not to do that unless you have some other nefarious reasons for not doing it. So, the underlying cause of this headlong rush to catastrophe is our society's obsession with economic growth as the sole criterion for measuring success. A dangerous myth of green growth propagated by techno optimists argue that through technological innovation, GDP can become decoupled from resource use and carbon emissions, permitting limitless growth on a finite planet. This has been shown to be nothing but a fantasy. It hasn't happened so far, and even the most wildly aggressive assumptions for greater efficiency lead to unsustainable consumption of global resources. So, who in this case are the conspirators? Well, if you're living a normal life in an affluent country, you don't need to look any further than the mirror. The wealthy OECD nations, with only 18% of global population, account for 74% of global GDP, and the richest 10% of people are responsible for more than half of the world's carbon emissions. Those of us who continue to benefit from the inequities dealt us by the global system and aren't actively engaged in curbing it are like a few shipwrecked survivors on a glided lifeboat, kicking others desperately, scrambling for life into the ocean to protect their own safety and comfort. We may not be actively kicking their knuckles, but by allowing this reckless system of unsustainable growth to continue, we implicitly make the same choice. So the next time someone tells you to do your research on their new conspiracy theory, please point them to the real conspiracies that are threatening life on this beautiful but troubled planet. All right? Because there are factual things, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. We could have talked about a lot of the other things that have come to light over the years. That's just, like I said, the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more that I could talk about. So why don't we do that and make a part 3? All right? We're going to break down some things that have been happening. And I know it's hard for people to wrap their heads around these things, but I wanted to just give you a taste so that you could be able to open your eyes and get past all the foolishness so you could get to the truth of things. So we're gonna do a part 3. I think a part 3 has to come. So in our next podcast, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna break things down even further and shed some more light into this. And I'm telling you, this banking crisis hasn't even begun yet. You just wait and see what happens. It's gonna be nasty because there's no way they can stop it. They've done too much damage. It's too late. It's too late to turn the tide. They know what they're doing. That's why they've been preparing. They've been saying one thing in front of the cameras while doing something else behind the scenes. They already have their escape plans. The elite have their escape plans. They plan to leave you holding the bag. And that's exactly what we're facing right now. So, with that being said, remember, everything is out there for you to see. All right. It's very little that is hidden. And even things that are hidden can still be brought to light. I know it's a lot harder now to do research after they've changed the internet, but what are you going to do? Thankfully, if you live in an area where they still have public libraries, that's your best resource. Because a lot of things have been scrubbed off the internet on purpose. All right, as because they want to cover things up. All right. So with that being said, don't forget to smash that like button, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.